Morning.
Morning.
So please pass these around. There are way too many. Or maybe not. I don't know. I made 30 copies. Okay. So first of all, I have to apologize, and you can leave because there's a false advertising. This wasn't the sermon from 2010. It was the sermon from 1910. It was the sermon from 1970. Really sorry.
That's it.
So if you want to leave, and maybe somebody else is talking about these sermons from 1910. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit before we start. What we're going to do is basically go through this drasha, a little bit about Aaron Shmuel Tamaris. Aaron Shmuel Tamaris is an interesting figure, fascinating figure in Eastern European Jewish historiography. How many people have heard of Aaron Shmuel Tamaris?
Just from you.
Yeah, there you go. So you're basically part of the vast, overwhelming majority of Jews who have never heard of Aaron Shmuel Tamaris. But he was an Orthodox rabbi, learned in Brisk, the famous great Lithuanian yeshiva, was rabbi for most of his life, for most of his career as a rabbi in the same shul, the same town that his father was rabbi in, which is a town called Mielch, which I'm assuming that you also have not heard of, because I hadn't before I heard of Tamaris. It's a town that had at its peak a Jewish population of 1,500 people. That went up and down. However, at the same time, Tamaris himself was very involved in a lot of the currents of Jewish life, both internally, mainly internally, fighting against and agreeing with on what he called frumkeit, which is overly pietistic practices on the one hand, and the Enlightenment or Reform on the other hand. And he has an interesting take on that in this drasha that we're going to read. He was also a Zionist, early on a Zionist, went to the Second Zionist Congress, which is sometime around 1900 in London. Later on withdrew from the Zionist movement because of issues of militarism and thought that they were going to rehearse the militarism of European nationalism. He was a very strong critic of militarism and European nationalism. He has a different book called Knesset Yisrael Milchamot HaGoyim, the people of Israel and the wars of the nations, in which he says things like, it's beyond my recognition, it's beyond the capability of my understanding why people, for a piece of tin, will go out and kill other people with whom they have a lot in common and don't know anything at all about them, but merely to satisfy their commanders. Okay. So he was a very strong, he was drawn to, or he saw a lot that he appreciated in social democrats. He saw a lot to be denigrated in the nationalist system of his time, and he called nationalism idolatry. And he thought that nationalism and war were idolatry upon which were sacrificed people. So that's a little bit about Tamaris. Now, what we're going to be looking at is Tamaris is also interesting in another way, that he wrote in a lot of different ways, and all in Hebrew. So it's a wonderful Hebrew. Part of the reason that I wanted to read it in Hebrew, part of the reason is because it has been translated into English, but part of it is that his Hebrew is really fascinating. It's at that period in time, around the late 19th century, early 20th century, when Hebrew was in flux. So everybody was making up their own Hebrew, right? Because Ben Yehuda, even though everybody claims that Ben Yehuda was the father of the Hebrew language had thousands of fathers. Ben Yehuda had a good agent. So the Hebrew that he was writing is not a rabbinic Hebrew, right? Though he can write rabbinic Hebrew, he wrote a book of responsa in rabbinic Hebrew. It's not a modern contemporary Hebrew that we would recognize. It's a Hebrew that's somewhere in the middle. Every once in a while he won't have an exact word, so he'll use a word in Russian or German or Hungarian. The book, the drasha that we're going to look at is from this book called Musar HaTorah V'Yahadut, The book itself, if you're interested in it, is available on HebrewBooks.org. And it can be downloaded and bound, like I did here. What this is a collection of his drashot for Shabbat Shuvah and Shabbat HaGadol. He would give them twice a year. I can't imagine that he actually gave them in Hebrew, because I can't imagine there were that many people in Mielch in the first decade of the 20th century who spoke in Hebrew was good enough to get this in Hebrew. But we don't have any copies of them. They're not extant at all in Yiddish, which would have been the language that I would have thought he would have given him. So this is all we have. These are all the recordings. He obviously wrote them in Hebrew. He engaged in polemics in Hebrew, and that way he was very much part of the Zionist movement, which was a tchiyah of the Hebrew language. Engaged in polemics all over the place. He actually called himself, before he came out with his name, he called himself Achad HaRabbanim HaMargishim, which in modern Hebrew, in contemporary Hebrew, would be one of the feeling rabbis, or one of the sensate rabbis, which isn't such a great title, but what he meant was one of the sensitive rabbis, right? So one of the rabbis who are sensitive to the feelings of his people. So, say it again?
Unlike the rest.
Unlike the rest. Now, that was one of the things, that he was one of his pet peeves, which had nothing to do with external politics or Zionist politics. One of his pet peeves was the way that the Rabbis in his time would fight with each other. And that there would be these internal struggles, which we knew happened between different courts and different Rabbis and different Hasidim, and they would come to blows over silly things. And he doesn't give specific examples, though at the end he has a drasha, which he gives, which is kind of interesting, that he went to a town next to his, and he gave a whole drasha in defense of a rabbi against his community. And he said the rabbi was being persecuted by his community for no possible reason, and he went there in defense of the rabbi. But he does talk a little bit about that in this drasha. Now, okay, so we're going to get to the drasha. Any questions?
How did they stumble? Did they literally come to blows?
They did. Oh, yeah. I mean, across Europe, the Satmar Hasidim would go on field trips to other Hasidic courts to beat them up and burn down their Beit Midrash. Yeah. I mean, this was Milchamot Hashem. This was, right? And I mean, there was more than that. And then the Maskilim would inform on the Hasidim to the government because they weren't fulfilling certain statutes in education, and get people arrested and sent to the army. The Jews didn't like each other so much.
Yeah. How did you stumble upon this?
Oh, this guy. So within a very small circle of people, he's very well known. So one could trace it back to a book called Makbilim Nifkashim, Parallels Meet, which is written by an Israeli author, of course, whose name I'm going to blank on because I'm of that age, and written in the late 80s, early 90s, I want to say, about religion and Zionism. And this was one of the people who were spoken about, and that's the first time I ran across him. And then he's also a pacifist, so in other circles there's a translation of some of the stuff being happened. So, as I said, in a very small circle of people, he's really famous. Okay, any other questions? Cool. All right. So I want to say, let's just start at the beginning. I want to. Could somebody tell me when it is? Like we're supposed to finish at 11:55, so like 11:50.
All right.
Oh, there you go. My watch.
We've done one so far.
Okay. So, in broad strokes, what he's going to do is he's going to make a claim. He's going to make 2 or 3 large claims. The first is that before we do tshuva, we have to figure out what it means to do mitzvah, and what is the purpose of mitzvah. There are 2 possibilities. One possibility is that mitzvot are there because the king wants us to pay tax. Right? These are burdens and obligations upon us towards the king. King being God, of course. The second possibility is that mitzvot are there for our own benefit, in order to be able to make us into better human beings, to the best human beings we could be. Now, these two ideologies of mitzvot bring in their wake, of course, different notions of tshuva, right? And different notions of who God is, right? So if the mitzvot are like a netel, an obligation, a labor, then of course, tshuva means that you did something wrong and you're afraid of punishment. If, on the other hand, the mitzvot are not obligations in that sense, but rather they are ways by which we can help ourselves and succeed, then tshuva is actually just healing bad habits. Right? Then he also, third point, is that if the mitzvot are actually there to help people succeed in being better and being better towards each other, and that is dependent on the fact that each person knows that they were created with love and grace, then the category of what we usually call mitzvot, bein adam lamakom, between man and God, or people and God, is actually subordinate to the category of bein adam lechavero. And actually, bein adam lamakom mitzvot are there only to help us practice for bein adam lechavero. On the other hand, if we think that mitzvot are just paying tax to the king, or an obligation which is not for our benefit but only for God's benefit, then the only reason, then of course the primary obligation are the mitzvot between person and God, and the only reason we have obligations to other people is because God created them. So it's like, in his example, it's like the reason that it is illegal to harm a police officer. And he adds, even in countries where the government doesn't actually care at all about people. But since a police officer is a symbol of the regime, so then you're not allowed to harm them. Right? So that's why, so therefore, mitzvot ben adam l'chavero, between people, is only because people were created by God, and therefore they are a chayfetz kadosh. Right? They are a sacred vessel. Right? Okay. Then finally, he says, and this is perhaps, up to now, none of this has been radical enough. Finally, he says that this all impacts our understanding of what happens in the world. Right? When we do bad stuff, when we don't keep the mitzvot, do we get punished by God? Right? If our understanding is of God as king, God as sheriff, God is whatever image you want there, then when we do bad stuff, God is going to throw us in jail, right? God's going to bring awful stuff upon us and therefore, when we look at the world, the reason that bad things are happening, the pogroms that he lists in gory detail, right, the pogroms and the travails of the exile, are because God is punishing us, right? The direct punishments from God. On the other hand, if we understand that the mitzvot are there in order to make us excellent, then the mitzvot themselves are like seeds which are planted. And when you do a mitzvah, it plants a mitzvah tree. Right? He doesn't say that. But I don't know why the nursery school imagery. But when you plant a seed, so a tree will grow out of that mitzvah. When you do good deeds, good things will grow. When it's like his other image is of an echo, Right? When you throw your voice, when you scream in the middle, someplace where there are mountains, then you get your echo back. So what you put out in the world comes back to you. So when you put good out into the world, good things happen, and then good things happen back to you. When you put bad out into the world, bad things come from it, and then bad things also come back to you, both on a personal level and on a national level. Now, he also says that he's also aware of the fact that you don't see this on an immediate level. Somebody doesn't keep Shabbos and they don't immediately trip. It could be a couple of days. Right? So he says, I'm sorry. Okay. So he says that actually, because it's more complicated, and sometimes an echo will come back quickly, sometimes it'll take a long time. And he goes into another place, a whole topographical description of mountains. Like sometimes there are bends in the mountains, and so therefore they won't come back straight. Anyway, he's aware of the problem of the fact that if you're going to say that if you do good things, you get good things back. And therefore, his answer to theodicy is twofold. One is that it's not always immediate, right? Things happen, you put things out in the world, and then just as an echo, it takes a long time to get back. So you might not even get back to you. It might get back to your children, your grandchildren, or the next generation of the nation. The second thing, and this is perhaps more problematic, is that he's saying he takes the notion that the second Beit HaMikdash was destroyed because of Sinat Chinam, and says that this shows what happens. Right? In other words, that he's saying that now, he takes the notion of Sinat Chinam in a very specific way. Says that Sinat Chinam means people, in the name of God, doing lawful things to other people. His example were the Jesuits of his time, who were priests clad in priestly vestments, who would lead pogroms. That's his experience. Sure, it happened that way in some places, other places not. But his idea is that his example is that there you have the church giving cover to murder. So therefore, the church doesn't get back immediately because it's hard to figure out all the layers of awfulness that are there. So he says this is what happened in the set time of the Second Temple. That people who were priests, and he cites all kinds of verses to back himself up, people who were priests, people who were in charge of doing the religious ritual, and you just read Isaiah had the same idea, are actually not. They are actually doing evil, but under cover of being people of God. And so therefore it takes a long time for it to work out. And so in his understanding, exile is the working of this out. And exile is there not as punishment in the classic sense of punishment, but it's rather the ability to perfect the fine qualities of Israel. The ability to affect the fine qualities of Israel. And he goes through a whole little drush about it. Okay, so that's basically Aleph Ataf, what he says. And now we can go back and read some of him because it's beautiful. Any questions before we go on? Yes?
I'm just trying to distinguish how this is different from the old sense of karma. Where does God play into this? It's like an automatic response system. You do something, and there's a response.
So God plays. So it's interesting. So of course, he is favoring the notion that the mitzvot are for succeeding, etc., and so forth. In that sense, so first of all, it's different than the old sense of karma because this is Jewish, and he didn't have a sense of karma. He didn't have a sense of karma. But he did quote Frederick Douglass. He does quote Frederick Douglass at one point. He says that the oppressed will not. The oppressor will never give the oppressed freedom by choice. And he probably got it from, he doesn't quote Frederick Douglass by name, but he probably got it from Frederick Douglass through one of the Yiddish weeklies. But in any event, God's role in this is that God created you out of love and grace. And therefore you are worthy of love. If you are worthy of love, it is obvious that everybody else is worthy of love because you are no better than anybody else. So therefore, the basis for doing mitzvot ben adam l'chavero, relationship to other people, is because everybody else was also created by God in love and grace. Okay, so therefore, the moral system is founded on the basis of the fact that God created everybody. And God created everybody in love and grace.
Kind of weighted for good karma.
Excuse me?
There's a preference for good karma in this system.
No, there's not. That's what's interesting.
God
is, if you want to follow up on karma, there's no preference for good or bad karma, even in the Buddhist system, as far as I understand. God is detached from the system. But here, what is Jewish about this, aside from everything else, is that God is the creator, and in the act of creation guarantees, or in the act of creation founds a basis for ethics, in the fact that you are created out of love, you are worthy of being loved, therefore everybody else is, if I'm worthy of being loved, to say that nobody else is worthy of being loved is being narcissistic and solipsistic, and that's not worthy of being a Jew, maybe being president, but it's a whole other
Thank you.
That was my only clue. Okay.
Can I just ask,
Yes.
I may have missed this at the beginning, but did you explain the date of this that comes at the end of the introductory?
It's 1907. Tafresh Samachet. Is that what you're asking? Chet. Yeah. I actually have an original printing at home, so here it's broken up. But it's Tafresh Samachet, which is 1907.
It says on the program.
Yeah, in the beginning I said anybody who is interested in the 1910 drasha is excused and
Can you please repeat what galut therefore is, since the temple?
So galut, therefore exile or diaspora, is the ability, is generated by sinat chinam, right? Is generated by the hateful interaction, and is the ability to work that out and make better choices. Right? And it takes this long because it was so layered and complicated in that those who were supposed to be the best amongst the nation, the priests and those who worked in the temple, were actually doing evil when they were supposed to be good.
So in that case, there's an additional component to Sinat Chilam, that it's not just Kamsa Bar Kamsa, it's actually people working and being the hypocrites and thinking that...
Well, Kamsa Bar Kamsa is a good story, because where did that take place?
Well, right.
Right, it was a bunch of rabbis who were sitting around and allowing them. So those people who were should have stood up and said, no, don't do that, did it.
But it's the responsibility of them, specifically.
Yeah, so it gets complicated. Yeah, in other words, what he's saying is that it takes a longer time for it to work out because of the fact that there are these layers of pious evil doing, right? So for example, if the church would protect child abusers, God forbid, hypothetically, right? So takes much longer to work out because you even see that in the testimony of survivors because of the fact that they were brought up, they went into the church, it was a place of refuge, a place of God, and then the opposite happens. And so I think that's what he's saying, that it works out. But here he's saying that it's also what happens is that all these people who are supposed to put good in the world were putting bad in the world. And that bad kept coming back. So it takes a while, yes.
So related to that is that regardless of what the point of the mitzvot are and what motivates us, we're still to blame when things aren't going well for us. Even if down the road it might get a little better for our grandchildren.
There is
not feeling so much better because we're still to blame, which is Sinat Chinam because we weren't good to our neighbors. This isn't adding anything.
You're still depressed?
No, it's going to be a good lunch. I'm doing.
Oh, there you go. Okay. No. This whole notion. You're right. This whole notion, the notion that what happens in the world is a result of what we do, So the downside of that is saying that if bad things happen to me, it's because I did bad things. Now, the way that he complicates that is just by saying that that's not an immediate reaction. It's not necessarily if I do bad things in the world, then I will get bad things. But if I do bad things in the world, there will be more bad things in the world, and it might not happen to me, it might happen to you. Like, a friend of mine was, when I was in yeshiva years and years ago, two friends of mine were arguing about whether or not God's providence in the world was very direct, or it was more, or not direct, that God didn't really immediately answer people's prayers, and in the middle of the argument, one guy takes 2 steps back, and they say, what's going on? I said, well, yeah, if you think that God's not infallible and that God doesn't immediately react, maybe God is going to try to strike you down and miss. I don't want to be there. Okay, so let's go through a number of these points inside. Now that we have the overview, everybody turn to page 1, which is the page that doesn't have a number on it. It's called 50. It'll be the page before 52, the page that has 1907. Okay, so let's start with. Okay, so his first point is okay. Let's start on the bottom of page 52. His first point is that he goes to his really kind of beautiful thing, which you can read on your own. Beautiful thing where it's now the end of summer, we're going into fall. It was already snowing probably, and it's pretty depressing, and that's where we get the idea of tshuva as a very depressing kind of thing. Now, so top of page 52. B'milah achat, kol hasviva, the first full paragraph. B'milah achat, kol hasviva, svivot adam leah heder v'chilyon be'elo yamim, shekol elu yazkir la'adam et kitzei levavo, ki gam hu ben chalof u'bilti netzchi. In one word, the whole everybody's surroundings, people's surroundings, are full of absence and dying off. That's what happens in fall in these days. And all these remind a person of the wounds of his heart, because that person is also mortal and not eternal. So havanit bonen, I'm skipping a paragraph, havanit bonen na ha'im derech hatshuva kazeh hu derech ratzui. So let's now take a look to see if this is the right way of tshuva. And in that paragraph that I skipped, he said, talking about people flagellating themselves and waking up early in the morning and saying al chet and all this kind of all this stuff, and it all being depressing. And going to the other thing that he really does not like is people going to cemeteries and praying to their ancestors. V'hinei lachar k'tzat atbonenut b'davar nireh ki haderech hazeh ein bo lo mimidat ha'chochma v'lo mimidat ha'torah. So after a little bit of discernment, we can see that this way it doesn't have either chokhmah, either wisdom, or it is not what the Torah wants. Mitzad chokhmah lo nachon derech hazeh is not right from the side of wisdom. D'ma betza yesh bahashka'at ha'adam et rayono b'toch hatzirim ha'matzibim. So this is because why should a person get depressed because of the fact that it's depressing outside, and therefore decide that tshuva should be depressing. Ma'atam yesh b'davar להוריד ראשו להסתכל אל תוך לא הפי השאול והאבדון הנצחי הפתוח מתחת לרגלי אדם עד שיתחיל להסתובב ראשו ויאחזהו שבת. What purpose does it serve for a person to constantly look into the pit of damnation until he gets so stressed out that he'll get a stroke? Does this help in any way to push off whatever catastrophe might come? And skip to the next paragraph. And mikol shekain shederach zeh lo nirtza mitzad Torah shekain katuv b'mikra re'ei natati lefnecha et ha'chayim ve'et hatov ve'et ha'mavet ve'et Torah u'bacharta b'chayim. Right. So it says in Torah that I put 2 paths before you: the life and good, and death and evil, and you should choose life. Hinei hayotzer, because the Creator, b'briyato et ha'adam hayar et sono sheyichya b'mei chaldo al aretz b'simcha v'cheshet, because the Creator wanted a person to live on this earth with happiness and joy and desire. Uval yimarer et chayav b'rayonei etzev odot achriyuto shehu mikavshed rachmana, and not to embitter his life with all kinds of sad ideas about the end of his days, which is just, that's what happens. And is up to God when a person dies. Allah dam l'naker v'lechateit b'inyan zeh. A person should not constantly be thinking about this. And let's skip to the next paragraph. And if you think that what we've been doing so far is actually proper tshuva, where we go around and we flagellate ourselves and we say al chet all day and all night, he says, in the third paragraph, uve amana, which is his be'emet, right? And in truth, yesh makom gadol harher pen lo niklahi tevel derech tshuva. Right? Maybe after all these years, we actually haven't gotten what tshuva is. Why? Hein lo lechinam samchu chazal b'tfilat Shemona Esrei berkat tshuva leberkat chonei nadat. El mipnei shekmo shenitna gemara tam al kviyat havdalah b'toch berkat hadat lefi shem ein havdalah bein or lechoshech v'yicholim lafoch or choshech v'choshech laor. So why do we have the bracha of chonei nadat before the bracha of tshuva and Shemona Esrei? Because you need dat in order to do tshuva, just like you need dat, wisdom, discernment, in order to make havdalah. Otherwise, you start flipping night into day and day into night. Kenu gam tam smichat berkat tshuva berkat hadat lefi she'en ein dat, ein tshuva, ve'ein prisha min hara. But if you don't have discernment, then you don't have repentance, and there is no going away from evil. Ki bli dat efshar lomar al tov ra ve'al ra tov. Because without discernment, you can think of evil as good and good as evil. And to, klap al chet and say, I've sinned for not sinning enough. And he says, further, he brings this example that dugmat hadavar shesafru lifnei shinim achadot al sarach hatzura yudim shnatal amut. There was this evil prince who hated the Jews, who was about to die, and his wife was just as evil as he was, and on his deathbed where he was suffering greatly, he said, "Oh God, why are you making me suffer so bad? Did I not oppress the Jews all my life?" Right? So Baruch derech hatshuva yefo kotev drushani nochachi. So in other words, if you don't understand, if you don't know what the good is, then you can pursue the evil as if it's good. So Tamaris actually is putting the good on a moral plane, and not the other way. Just for those who are keeping count. All right. So here, this is where he starts from. First, you have to know the difference between the good and evil. Then you have to know what it is that where we think about mitzvot and tshuva. And so we go to the next page, second paragraph. ההבדל הוא בהשקפה אחת קצרה אבל בוקעת ריקים. So the difference between our understanding of tshuva and our understanding of mitzvot is short, but it pierces heavens. היא החקירה השגורה תדיר על שפתנו בספרנו הזה להיותה הרעיון היסודי של כל דרשותינו, and this is this investigation, this analysis, which we constantly bring up, and that's true, he does constantly bring it up, in this book, is the basic or foundational idea of all of our drashot. Al odot matrat haTorah v'mitzvah. And this is, what is the goal of Torah and mitzvahs? Im tzarich lashkif aleim kal chanina me'et Hashem la'osher u'la'atzlachat ha'adam. Is it to look upon them as a grant from God for the success and the happiness of a person? O hemeches varnona ba'ad adona borei ba'atzmo ki chefzo she'yishamshuhu bruav ha'anashim kavadim meshamshim et adonam. Or is it like a tax that's levied by the Creator because the Creator wants that people will serve Him like a servant who serves their master? Now, if you know this, it resonates with Maimonidean language. Maimonides has the end of L'chot Shuvah, L'chot Yesodei Torah, that we shouldn't serve God as Avadim Mishamshim et Tarav, and Maimonides takes that from Pirkei Avot, but then changes the end and says it rather Elahu Aborei Chayavim L'Shamsham. Right? Rather than Pirkei Avot, which ends up by saying that we should rather be like a servant who serves their master not for pay, which never happens. The Rambam says we should actually serve God because God is the one who is worthy to be served. Right? And there's a lot of Maimonidean resonances in Tamaris. But here he's saying that this is the bad side. Is like, do we think that mitzvot are for good, or do we think that mitzvot are actually there because God needs people to serve God, and if not, God doesn't have the inferiority complex. Okay, so then he goes into what we talked about, the distinguishes between mitzvot ben adam l'chavero and ben adam l'makom, and according to the mitzvot are good for you, then ben adam l'chavero is the primary category, and ben adam l'makom is only a way to practice for ben adam l'chavero. And according to the other category, if it's just that God needs people to serve God, so then actually ben adam l'makom is the primary category, and ben adam l'chavero is only because people were created by God, so therefore they're holy vessels and they're symbolic of God. Yeah?
Isn't there a danger if you read, I mean, and he might address this, but if ben adam l'makom is just for practicing ben adam l'chavero, if somebody is pretty darn good at mitzvot ben adam l'chavero, that they could say, or that they could read that and say, like, that's where my focus is. I don't actually need that practice anymore, and then leave ben adam l'makom aside.
So then the person has to work on hubris. No, I think. So his critique of the Reform movement is in his time is the way he understands the Reform movement is that they got rid of mitzvot ben adam l'makom and only kept mitzvot ben adam l'chavero.
Right.
And his critique is that they don't understand what mitzvot ben adam l'makom are, because mitzvot ben adam l'makom should be called mitzvot ben adam la'atzmo, because what they're actually doing is creating a certain practice, a habit of thought and action, so that a person will be better able to interact with another person. Now, I do have to say that as a darshan, he's never called on to list the details of what that looks like. Right? How is shatnez helping me in my interactions with other people? Whatever. It's like there are
You pay the guy who checks for shatnez. You pay him well.
Then does he kind of suspend divine judgment at all? I mean,
he does to a certain extent. In other words, divine judgment is not divine judgment. It's more
personal.
It's actually to put this in a larger context. He is, he's more of a Mishlei, Tehillim guy than he is a Dvarim guy, right? And so if you do good, good happens. If you do evil, evil happens. Now that's the way God is there because God created the world. So God started the systems, and God created you in love. So therefore, that.
But God wants us to be the most we can be, and that's the only part of tshuva with God involved. There's not a sense of punishment or Gehenna or anything.
Nothing. I mean, there is. I don't know. He doesn't talk about Olam Haba. He doesn't talk about beyond this world. But there is a sense that we can make this world into a Gehenna. Right?
Yeah.
That if we do bad stuff, it's like actually there's I'll get you in 1 second. There's a great Torah, the Baal Shem Tov, which is unconnected to this, but who says that Torah is called Tal, right? In Bet Hanan, not Bet Hanan, in Hazinu. And what does Tal mean? Tal is do. What does Tal do, as it were? It just rains down on everything. Now, so therefore, that means that if people planted wheat or grain, then that's what would grow. If people didn't plant wheat or grain, so weeds would grow, right? And that's what Torah is. So he says he says it's pretty radical. He says, why did the Jews have to do tshuva on the way to Sinai? Because he says that Torah just strengthens what's already in a person. So if you're an evil person, you learn Torah, that strengthens your evil. Like the dew that falls on a field of weeds.
Sharpens your ability.
Right. So that is somewhat similar. It's kind of on an oblique angle to what he's saying, which is that what you put out in the world comes back. Yes?
I may be missing something, but in 1907, we had pogroms, and in the 1930s, we had the Shoah. How would he explain those?
Well, he lived through the pogroms. He talks about pogroms.
Okay.
And he says that what goes on there, it's not, and I said before, there's not a direct relation. He didn't live through the Shoah, he died much earlier than that. So, what he would say, as hard as it is to hear, is that what we were supposed to be doing all through the exile was perfecting our qualities as a people, and that would have put out more good in the world, and therefore, these things would not have happened. Okay? So, this is a theodicy, right? Even though it's a theodicy in the sense that it cuts God out of the cycle, you can't ask him, why did God do this? Because he would say, God didn't do it, you did it. Right? Now, that's not an answer which you can cuddle up with at night. But then again, the world that he lived in wasn't a world you could cuddle up with at night. I mean, he wasn't opaque to the world. The world was at his doorstep. Right? He lived through the pogroms. He actually has very, very detailed and graphic descriptions of what happens in a pogrom, of killing of children and babies and stuff. So he was very well aware of that, and that's on the background of which he wrote, and within which he wrote. And he said, look, this is what happens in our galut, right? And we're doing the wrong thing. One of the things he says here that we skipped is that we've been doing this tshuva, going to the cemeteries and fasting and flagellating ourselves for centuries. Hasn't it occurred to anybody that it's not working? So do it differently. That's what he's saying. We have to do it differently, right? And we have to do it in such a way, and this is part of his opposition. This is getting off the rails here a little bit, but this is part of his opposition to Zionism, was that you are recreating European nationalism, right? All these centuries, we've been oppressed by European nationalism, and now what you want to do is recreate European nationalism. Whether or not he's right, but it's the same idea that if you're going to do something new, do something new. Yeah.
If tshuva is not working, because we've been doing it, what path of tshuva did he actually?
Oh, so his path of tshuva. Thank you.
No.
Pushing us forward.
No,
And
I missed
actually,
it.
no. So his path of tshuva, which I mentioned before, but it's good. And actually, why don't we take a? Okay, so let's go to page 65, and this might answer your question. And if it doesn't, we're jumping over. There's a lot of stuff in the middle, which read at home.
Did you say that Torah strength was already a person, so if you're a bad person and you study Torah, you'll become worse?
Yes, that's what the Baal Shem Tov says. That's not Tamaris. That's the Baal Shem Tov. Okay. Kol ha'chizyon amur l'mala. Everything that we said before. So this is kind of the summary paragraph. Maybe we'll jump to the end of it. There you go. Okay, so everything that we said before. Korot ishtabshut musagei Torah b'meshach yimei hagalut. The fact that the concepts of Torah were destroyed and messed up in all the days of exile. Shenit'u lachshov ki ha'inuyim ha'sigufim shevet b'chashecha lo amidot tovot hema ikarei avodat Hashem. That thinking that all the inuyim, the inflicting pain on oneself and sitting in darkness and not the good characteristics, those are the central plank of the worship of God. V'shal yedei zeh titgaberna v'tilachna b'redifot hagalut al bnei Yisrael v'einam nimtzaim v'magal ksamim shel bater aniya azla aniyuta, and that by the way of doing all these things of flagellating and fasting and sitting in the dark, that all the oppressions and persecutions of the exile that came onto Israel will go away. We will overcome them, and we see that actually we are in this evil cycle of poverty coming after poor people. Hagalut mechashevet et musagei haTorah, machshechet et musagei haTorah, v'cheshchat musagei haTorah magberet et muaket hagalut. That the exile darkens the notions of Torah, and then the darkness and notions of Torah actually strengthens the galut. V'sheha eitzaha achat. And the only advice, the only counsel, he lefrotz b'chazka el malgal ksamim, is to break out in strength from this evil cycle. Ulegalot et ha'ma'or shebetorah shirak bo'ofen zeh tofia ha'geula b'achrityanim, and to uncover the light in Torah, and that only in that way will redemption appear at the end of days. Kol ha'chizyon hazeh muv'ar b'sidrat v'etchanan, and this is all appears in the Parsha V'etchanan. Parsha zo yesh kama dikdukim atzumim shelefi hartzatenu yitbaru kulam kamin chomer. That they will all, that will explain everything that's going on. Now what he says there is an interesting thing. The next paragraph, Hinei ba ko yigbu lanu yinavu shama ktuvim, the psukim say, and there's one pasuk there which is important. As you go 2/3 of the way down the paragraph, you can go into the galut, you're going to go and God will kick you out of the land when you do bad things like idolatry. And avaditem sham Elohim maseh yidei adam. You worship their gods which are created by people. Eitz v'evan asher lo yirun v'lo yishma'un, gods which are not responsive. Ubikashtem misham et Hashem elokecha umatzata ki tishushem b'chol barucha b'chol nafshecha. And from there you will go after or demand God, and demand it with all your heart and all your soul, and then God will gather you in. Then the redemption will come. So he does the following thing. He says, the difference between here and the Tochacha that we read in Bamidbar is that here it doesn't say, V'vadatem sham Elohim acherim. It doesn't say you will worship foreign gods. It says you will worship gods. Maseh yidei adam. You will worship gods, and he explains, Maseh yidei adam, that you will worship gods in the way that you've been worshiping them the whole time. And you will go on and worship God and call out to God. And there will be no response because you're still doing the same things you did beforehand. Until ubikashtem misham. When you get to the place that you realize that this doesn't work, then you will actually pray to God. Then you will actually demand or request or go after God. And what that means is that you will stop beating yourself up and realize that you have to improve yourself. That the mitzvot are there to make you a better human being. And once you become a better human being, then things will change. You will stop the inuyim, you will stop the fasting and sitting in the dark, you will start keeping Torah, and then you'll get into a better cycle. What's the opposite of a vicious cycle? There is some other word. A generous cycle, where you start doing well, you start doing good, you start improving yourself. Then the clarity of that clarifies the concepts of Torah, which then strengthen your doing good, which then clarifies the Torah, which then strengthens your doing good, which then brings redemption. So that's how you get out of That's how you get out of the exile. That's how you get out of this vicious cycle of just calling out and saying, "Oh, why is this happening to me?" By changing your habits.
So
the only way to
the
change.
Elohim Acherim is doing things the same way that we've
Yeah,
always done.
and no, because it's not Elohim Acherim, it's Elohim.
Right.
That's the wild thing. He's saying they weren't worshiping idols. They're worshiping God, but they're worshiping God Maseh Yedei Adam. They're worshiping God in the way that they always did. Right? It's a brilliant drush. I gotta say, I just like that. Right? But so therefore, what he's basically, the bottom line is, the way to stop doing bad and start doing good, which will then impact the whole world, is by stop doing bad and start doing good. That's the bottom line. That's all I got.